Divine Oracle, Unwritten Words Behind My Novel. The historical blueprint of a great Argead saga, ALEXEIN. Volume 1, Telesias, The War Dance. By Makāula Nakae. Audio essay. Episode 12, Divine Kingship and the Heracles Legacy. Welcome back to Divine Oracle, Unwritten Words Behind My Novel. I am Makāula Nakae. When we examine the autocratic power structure of ancient Macedonia, we are navigating a landscape where political sovereignty was completely inseparable from cosmic authority. The title of the Macedonian king, the Basileus, transcended our modern, secular definitions of statecraft. It represented a potent, volatile fusion of absolute military command and supreme religious custody, fundamentally shaping the kingdom's identity and its violent outward trajectory. The Basileus did not merely rule by the consent of the baronial houses. He operated as the living bridge between the mortal world and the divine pantheon. To understand how a fractured northern territory transformed into a world-conquering machine under King Philip II and his son Alexander, we must first decode the foundational mythic architecture that backed their crown. The bloodline of the demigod Heracles. The Basileus as supreme priest. In the lowlands of Macedonia, the Basileus was the absolute religious apex of the state, serving actively as its chief priest. This was never a passive ceremonial title to be displayed during palace banquets. It was a devastatingly effective political tool for maintaining centralized control. The king personally directed all major state religious operations. He was the only individual with the recognized authority to conduct critical animal sacrifices, maintain the security of royal temples, and govern the massive seasonal festivals that bound the populace together. By controlling exclusive access to the divine realm, the Basileus systematically reinforced his earthly legitimacy. In a deeply pious, warrior society, disobedience to the king was not merely a political crime of treason. It was an act of profound sacrilege against the gods. Every military campaign, every international treaty, and every political assembly began with the king staining his hands in sacrifice to secure the favor of the immortals. The Heraclean blueprint, ancestral legitimacy. The ruling Argead house of Pallas strategically, aggressively cultivated a lineage that claimed direct descent from Heracles, the ultimate heroic demigod of the Hellenic world. This ancestral claim was the absolute core of Macedonian royal ideology. By locking their lineage to a figure of divine parentage, the Argead kings lifted their authority far above the shifting rivalries of the local aristocracy. For the ancient Greeks, Heracles was the ultimate embodiment of order overcoming primeval chaos, raw physical resilience, and triumphant masculinity. For the Macedonian kings, carrying his blood meant they inherited his cosmic mandate. This ancestral link granted the Basileus an unassailable prestige across the Mediterranean. It served as their primary credential to prove their authentic Greek identity to the arrogant southern city-states, and it provided an ideological blueprint for absolute military conquest. The entire royal family participated in these ancestral rites, transforming the ruling dynasty into a sacred lineage that carried the heavy, heroic expectations of their demigod forefather. The foundational myth, ALEXEIN and the 12 Labors. To truly understand the psychological force driving characters like Philip and Alexander, we must look at the raw narrative architecture of the Heracles mythos itself. The chronicle begins with a mortal woman of noble lineage, ALEXEIN, princess of Mycenae. Her union with Zeus, the king of the gods, who visited her disguised as her husband Amphitryon, illustrates the profound, often violent intersection between the human and divine worlds. ALEXEIN's story is defined by extraordinary maternal resilience. She endured the immediate, relentless persecution of Zeus's jealous wife, Hera, who attempted to strangle the infant Heracles in his cradle using monstrous serpents. ALEXEIN's capacity to protect and raise a child targeted by divine hostility establishes the archetypal blueprint for the fierce, protective sovereignty we later see executed by Queen Olympias. Hera's enduring malice eventually drove Heracles into a state of temporary, catastrophic madness, during which he committed a horrific domestic crime. To purify his soul and claim his immortal birthright, he was condemned to execute the legendary 12 Labors under the orders of his rival, King Eurydice. These tasks were a brutal test of superhuman strength, tactical cunning, and raw endurance. From strangling the invulnerable Nemean lion and severing the regenerating heads of the Lernaean hydra, to capturing the man-eating mares of Diomedes and descending directly into the jaws of Hades, to drag the three-headed hound Cerberus into the light. These labors were never simple physical exercises. They were spiritual and symbolic trials. They represented the ultimate victory of human virtue, discipline, and intellect over monstrous, untamed adversity. A cosmic message that the Argead kings internalized completely as they sought to impose their own order upon a chaotic world. The propagation of the bloodline, the Heraclidae. Heracles met his mortal end not on the field of combat, but through the agony of a poison robe saturated with the toxic blood of the centaur Nessus. Yet his death was immediately followed by his apotheosis, his transcendent elevation into absolute godhood, taking his place among the Olympian immortals. He left behind a vast lineage scattered across the Greek world, known as the Heraclidae. His descendants, such as his son Hylas, who led the exiled children of the hero back to reclaim their ancestral lands in the Peloponnese, inherited his physical prowess, his hypermasculine vitality, and his relentless drive for dominance. For centuries, the stories of his children founded cities, consolidated kingdoms, and established regional ruling dynasties. In Macedonia, the Argead kings viewed themselves as the direct heirs to this scattered legacy, ruling with the absolute conviction that the blood of the ultimate hero flowed directly through their veins. The liturgical calendar, ritualizing the demigod. The worship of Heracles was woven directly into the daily life and seasonal calendar of ancient Macedonia. His image was stamped onto the realm's silver coins, carved into the walls of military gymnasiums, and carried onto the battlefield as a sacred talisman of protection. The religious calendar featured an annual cycle of rituals designed to honor his distinct supernatural and spiritual attributes. Spring triumphs, celebrated with intense athletic competitions, wrestling matches, and weapons testing, honoring Heracles' raw physical excellence and vitality as the earth renewed itself. Summer spectacles, featuring grand dramatic performances and musical contests that actively reenacted his legendary labors, transforming religious myth into public political education. Autumn feasts, centering on massive state-funded animal sacrifices, where great bulls were slaughtered by the king's own hand, seeking divine favor for the harvest and the consolidation of the borders. Winter commemorations, darker, symbolic nocturnal rituals, focusing on Heracles' harrowing descent into the underworld and his ultimate triumph over death itself. The critical corrective, shifting the paradigm. In ALEXEIN, we do not treat these myths as simple fairy tales or primitive superstitions. We treat them as the absolute psychological engine of the Macedonian state. When Philip Tyrian his army and marched south to claim control of the sacred oracle of Delphi, he was executing the Heraclean paradigm, using superior intellectual geometry to force order upon a chaotic, fractured world. When Alexander later crossed the Hellespont to challenge the absolute power of the Persian Empire, he did not see himself merely as a king of a northern territory semicolon. He saw himself as a direct descendant of Heracles, carrying out a divine mandate to expand the boundaries of the known world. In our narrative, we strip away the sanitized modern interpretations of these figures. We restore the raw, unyielding reality of an elite lineage that walked alongside the gods, utilizing the absolute authority of the Basileus to forge an empire that would echo through eternity. Tune in for our next daily drop tomorrow as we continue to dissect the bloodlines of antiquity. ALEXEIN, a great Argead saga. Volume 1, Telesias, the War Dance. Unearth the ultimate historical drama. We are releasing a brand new episode every single day until the epic conclusion of Volume 1. Each chapter delivers a tight, hyper-focused, 5 to 15-minute hit of cinematic historical drama, the perfect daily plunge into the ancient world. Watch the cinematic video trailer. Listen to the full saga now. Bookmark Volume 1, Telesias playlist. Subscribe to follow the rise of the Argead Dynasty. Thumbs up to help push our vanguard through the algorithm's gauntlet. Comment below. Was the Argead claim to the bloodline of Heracles a genuine, deeply held spiritual conviction that directed their grand strategy? Or was it a brilliant, calculated piece of political propaganda designed to legitimize Macedonian autocracy over the rest of Greece? Let me know your breakdowns in the comments below.